Well, President Kibaki was many things to many people. Known as a reclusive character to some, touted as clever and calculating, and of course a towering economist. For a man whose life was dominated with public service, there's a lot to talk about, from his days as finance minister to presidency, from his time as KANU stalwart, leading to opposition leader. Tonight I have with me in studio journalists who covered and interacted with the man. How did they see this man and his contribution to the society? But for one, Kibaki was a very complex character. He believed deeply in ideals that he's credited to have told off detractors of one time KANU that they can't defeat the party. It's like cutting a mugumo tree with a razor blade. He ended up being a fierce critic of KANU and eventually defeating that behemoth of a party in 2002. His governance style is also credited to be one of a style, one that allowed civil servants to act freely without intimidation. He turned around the economy of the country and made the country to follow a vision of development and borrowing of loans. His politics, however, especially in his second term, left a lot to be desired. The country descended into political chaos after the debacle of 2007 elections. He made up and formed a grand coalition government. Indeed, there's a lot to talk about on all these points. The public will remember him for his free talk and open rebuke in everything, including his own family matters.
He was known as the gentleman of Kenyan politics, and that earned the professional reputation of a pacifist. But his personal life was a different matter entirely.
You have been tormenting us. I don't know what to get out of it.
In fact, when he served as the third president of the Republic of Kenya between 2002 and 2013, it played out explosively.
I open your paper, the other one, the other one, the other one. Kibaki, 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 Kibaki. First of all, when will you learn ever to call him president?
His First Lady, Lucy Kibaki, not above raising eyebrows or storming a newsroom when she perceived a slight.
Doing this on hundreds and thousands of Kenyans who cannot come here and defend themselves or tell you how they feel.
Whether it was a Nation newspaper report of her filing a report at the Muthaiga police station clad in a pair of shorts, as happened in 2005 after she interrupted a party at the home of then World Bank country director Makta Diop, or when the headlines hit much closer to home.
Ask now or never.
But more was to come, as newspaper reports regularly associated Othaya businesswoman Mary Wambui with the president, all innuendo focusing on the fact that Wambui enjoyed the trappings of power, including state security. The president had to call a rare news conference to clear the air.
You know, and I know, and everybody else knows that I'm married and I have only one wife.
But these were far from the only encounters that rattled the press. 3 years earlier, in 2006, Mombasa Road-based broadcaster KTN was taken off air, and thousands of copies of the Standard newspaper set ablaze by masked men over a story that then Security Minister John Mishuki claimed would have been disrespectful to the president.
When you rattle a snake, you must be prepared to be bitten.
A parliamentary inquest later revealing that the attack was orchestrated by the infamous Armenian Artur brothers, apparently with the full knowledge of Kibaki. But it was far from the only occasion at which Kibaki himself raised eyebrows.
Kweli una maana gani? Una maana wewe ni binadamu ya mavi ya kuku.
The colorful language testament to the checkered tenure that was President Kibaki's.
Kwa upuzi wake na ushenzi yake, ni lazima ataje Kibaki.
Olive Burrows, NTV.
With all due respect, the life and times of Kibaki, the man, the president, the politician. In studio with me, I have Iman Omari, veteran journalist. Karibu sana to the program. Ibrahim Moruko, not quite veteran journalist, but respected journalist here from the Nation. Karibu sana. And of course, Chairman Media Council of Kenya, Maina Mururi. Gentlemen, thank you very much. A lot can be said about this man, Kibaki, and we've had it pretty much all, you know. But there's something when people who've covered him and have been in close quarters to him have perhaps a different view. And I usually like these conversations. I talk to journalists, and despite of what we write out there or we put out there on television, these other things we find from characters. Let me start with you, Maina. You covered the man before you were still in opposition, the time when he was just sort of coming out into leading this opposition. What kind of a man was this Stanley Emilio Mwai Kibaki?
Thank you, James Matt. I covered Kibaki since 1992. He was a Democratic Party presidential candidate. As a standard reporter then, doing politics, I was attached to his team. And covering a whole campaign, I really got to get close to seeing how he operates and how he does his politics. He is, as people have said variously a lot, he was what you got is what you saw. He had few surprises. And he's a politician who, after he finishes speaking, that is all. You don't go behind the scenes nothing more. That is what exactly he means. However, there was a side of him that never would come out in public, which maybe sometimes you would get in interviews with him. I did several interviews with him. I interviewed him now not on politics, on the person. One of the most memorable ones I did was 1995. It was published in the Standard where I worked, August 1995. And I got to bring out in the newspaper a side of him that people had never seen. That behind this suave, quiet politician was a different man, not as cowardly as many politicians described him. If you allow me, I'll tell you the example.
Yes.
One example.
Please.
Democratic Party was formed on Christmas Day, 1991. That's when the announcement was made. But when we interviewed him in his house, later in 1995, he told us the party was not formed in 1991. They had mooted the idea in 1989, when Moi was still a single-party president. There was a wind of...
still strong.
There was a wind of change happening in Eastern Europe. Africa was being forced. Zambia already was heading multi-party. So Kibaki secretly met with his close buddies, John Keane, Mwamunga, Joseph Munyao, and they discussed, should this thing come to Kenya, how do we arrange ourselves to take over? Munyao confirmed it last week when he gave his eulogy. And he said, we started forming Democratic Party in 1989. You would have not thought of such a thing coming from Kibaki.
Yes, not as calculative as it's imagined.
Yes.
Eamon.
Yes, I probably covered and interacted with Kibaki much longer because I started covering him on from 4th October 1982.
Okay.
In Parliament. And Kibaki is a person that I can say he spoke English, but formulated his thoughts in African language. The reason why I'm saying like that is that the man used to simplify for you things speaking English, but you could see he was thinking in Kikuyu.
What does that mean?
What it means is that, and I'll give you two examples. One is how he handled the 1980 and 81 oil crisis. At that time, many people do not know. Banks did not have forex accounts. So importation was all central bank. And central bank is the one which had foreign currency. So all importations, Coca-Cola companies, PAT, whenever they wanted to import, they had to go to central bank. Now, the oil crisis, like today, the oil shot up. What Kibaki did is that, like any of your houses, if the bay of unga goes up, you now start slashing from majani, from beans, from sugar. So in order to ration the scarce foreign currency. So that foreign currency, which he rationed now, he did not, by the way, increase prices because we were still in a price control regime. He did not increase prices. But I never saw shortage of fuel.
It never happened.
It never happened. And yet, it was being imported by the government with a few dollars and with other imports. For instance, today, palm oil, which we use for manufacturing our kimbo and so forth, I think this year, last year, we used $670 million, which is second to oil. Now, what he did in 82 or 81 is that he reduced the $670 million of today, put it on oil. And by the way, by extension, East Africa Industries requires oil to manufacture. He was actually a great man in economics. And by the way, you don't just go to Chatham House. Chatham's house is London School of Economics. You don't, not anybody goes there. When he went to London School of Economics, he used it well. And it is the reason he's established financial institutions under his regime. Financial institutions, banks, and so forth.
Interesting. Ibrahim, what's your story? It's much later, of course.
Of course. And I don't seem to have anything to add from what the two.
You have a lot.
Yes, I saw him from far.
Yeah.
I know. I never had any personal, not a single day. I think I started being a big journalist when he was already a president. So.
How was it covering him?
Difficult, because perhaps it was very vague. As a journalist, you didn't know where the story was. And we had come from Moi, who used to have the prepared script and then delve into off the cuff. And that's where our story always used to come from. But Kibaki comes and he rightly observed, he reads the speech and he leaves you hanging out there. Or in those very rare occasions when he made those out of the script remarks, it was the kind of things you have heard about binadamu wa mshenzi, mupumbavu, and all that. So he was, as a newsmaker, he was a very complicated guy to me to capture, to understand what he was saying. Yeah, and I remember one time in the twilight of his presidency, when he went to Kitui and the issue about who he was supposed to endorse cropped up. So he says something and the then government spokesman says he has endorsed Kalonzo. You know, he has to come up and say, no, I didn't say that. You know? So the confusion. Yeah. And maybe it was deliberate. From what they're saying, he was a brilliant guy, but who went out of his way to deliberately mislead or confuse.
Is it would it be a proper profile to say that you're dealing here with a very brilliant man who was reclusive, yes, but also he knew what the public wanted was a persona of sorts. And so he deliberately fed this persona of a coward, of someone who did not, care so much about what the public says about him.
Or what was happening.
I would say that we have two Kibakis. Kibaki post-2001 accident. Obviously, it slowed him down and brought him health issues. And most of the Kibaki that many young journalists like Oruk have seen is a post-accident Kibaki.
Right.
He was never the same man. I covered him before the accident. That was a real Kibaki. Had he maybe not had the accident, we don't know what could have happened. Maybe he could have completed like that, the Kibaki we knew, the one who went to the Kitui rally on the day he came and had an accident at Machakos. I'll tell you why. In Parliament, I was a political writer, but not a parliamentary reporter. But I would go to Parliament a lot to get my interviews. He was a rare one, among few others of that time, when he stood to speak, and the guy has no notes. Almost 0 points of order to interrupt him. And he spoke, and he was articulate. And he would finish and get a few challengers. Former Kapenguria MP, Joseph Lotodo, lifted his hand and told the speaker, point of information, when Kibaki was on the floor. Kibaki shook his head. Mr. Speaker, point of information from that head of Lotodo. It was very embarrassing but funny.
Yeah.
He spoke well. During the Donde Bill, which was seeking to reduce interest rates on banks, he contributed immensely. And he said, if ever this government changes, that should be a priority to reduce interest rates. And you remember when he took over, one of the first things that were done was to reduce interest rates on banks. And government stopped taking loans from banks. I think we had a Kibaki who did not finish the way he started. And you can't blame it on him. It's fate of nature.
It's what is it?
Kibaki was more than a politician. What my colleague Mwiruri is saying in Parliament, it was actually, that is where you would see his mind, his thoughts, and his intellect. Because the bill he's referring to, he did two things and made it, he had an art of making very complicated things very easy. There was also, when he was contributing to that bill, an MP who rose on point of order. And that MP, he said, Mr. Speaker, it is unparliamentary. Otherwise, I would have uttered a word, but it is a useless point of order. Then he continued. Then, on the same bill, he actually made us understand where he was coming from. At that time, interest rates in banks were that high. So he told Parliament, you cannot take money from a bank unless you are doing the business of banking. Of course, you know, drugs, nobody controls the money, the price of drugs. So he made it, it sunk into people. Kibaki was a man who saw, like Jaramogi described, Moi, the giraffe who sees far. Kibaki in economics, he saw far. When the Berlin Wall collapsed, I was having tea with him in Parliament, and then he told me, Germany, the West Germany, will pay for underdevelopment of East Germany. And indeed, when they finally merged, the Deutschmark of Germany, West Germany at that time, went shoop, collapsed. And when I went to Germany, and I went to Dresden, which is in former East, I saw what Kibaki was telling me. West Germany was repairing buildings. And he was very uncomfortable because monetary union of East, the community, East Africa community, started long time ago. So he said, that was to me, it is uncomfortable to have monetary union with one currency because Kenya will have to pay for it because our currency to the dollar is that expensive. Their currency, Tanzania and Uganda, it is, you need to carry, and those were his words, you need to carry their currencies, money, in a sack to go and get $1,000. And he was right, even up to today, he was right, that we shall pay if we have one currency. Because, and he gave me an example, somebody has 10 bags of maize, and the other one has 3 bags of maize. The other one has 2 bags of maize, and you want to put together to share. It is not possible. I was a carny.
It's not possible. With all due respect.
Just to add what they did say, today I was listening, there was a special debate, rather a condolence motion on him in the Senate, and I think one of the most accomplished debaters in Kenya is listening to Orengo, as you know, and there's something they said about him having one of the greatest debaters. Those days before timing was introduced, I'm told Kibaki could debate for 1 week without losing touch, without going off record, and at no point was he ever ruled
2 of them
to be irrelevant. The rule of irrelevance never applied to him. So maybe again he's right to have said from this head of police.
All right. This is just the first, and here's get the point. When you talked about people who actually have spoken to the man and dealt with the man, you get to understand a bit more about, you know, the nitty-gritties of who this man was. You're watching With All Due Respect. We take a short break. When we come back, we go to a bit for analysis.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Renew your StarTimes monthly subscription today for just 299 shillings on Yota Bouquet and add on Super Kids Bouquet for just 150 shillings to save up to 70% off your subscription. Terms and conditions apply.
Your favorite peanut butter is now available at reduced prices. It's made with 100% pure peanuts and a rich source of omega-6, helping you grow healthy and happy kids. Buy and enjoy Blue Band peanut butter at reduced prices today. Made possible through local farming in Kenya.
May 2022 intake is ongoing. Drop your application and let SPU make you. Contact us on 0728 669 000 or visit any of our campuses in Limuru, Nairobi, Nakuru, and Machakos. St. Paul's University, your university of choice.
Every day, we make many choices. What time we wake up, what we eat, what we wear, where we go, and more. We think about the people in our lives and the many tomorrows that lie ahead. We think about being happy and how we can cherish every moment. A lifetime of the quality of life you deserve, well into retirement and beyond. Because life is about making choices, let's make the right ones together. For now, for retirement, and everything in between. Choose how you live.
Guys, lipstick is for mommy, not the wall. said pick one each. One. Children, they are cute no matter what they do, but there is nothing cute about fever. Panadol Baby and Infant starts to work on fever in just 15 minutes. Trust Panadol Baby and Infant to work on fever fast to bring back their cute smiles.
Almost 250,000 people die on the road in Africa each year. Follow these safe steps and help save lives. Pedestrians, avoid using electronic devices, stay on sidewalks. At a road crossing, stop, look both ways, listen, and then cross. So when you're on the roads, follow these safe steps and help save lives. We all have a role to play in road safety. Together, let's make Africa's road safer.
Starts to work on fever in just 15 minutes. Trust Panadol Baby and Infant to work on fever fast to bring back their cute smiles.
Welcome to BBC Podcasts.
Just being on the podium and hearing your national anthem played, that's what you compete for.
What if you could copy the desert's most famous animal to design a more environmentally friendly building?
Is Kim Jong-un trying to train a young generation of warriors in a new frontier, cyberspace?
Explore new worlds together with podcasts from BBC News World Service.
Guys, lipstick is for Mummy, not the wall. I said pick one each. One. Children, they are cute no matter what they do, but there is nothing cute about fever. Panadol Baby and Infant starts to work on fever in just 15 minutes. Trust Panadol Baby and Infant to work on fever fast to bring back their cute smiles.
Are you a HELP beneficiary with an outstanding loan? From the 1st of March to the 30th of April 2022, we are offering you a 100% COVID-19 penalty waiver. Kamilisha malipo yako ya HELP leo.
All our dreams can come true, and HELP is the best place to empower our dreams. Kamilisha malipo ya HELP.
Take advantage of the 100% penalty waiver and clear your HELP loan today. Terms and conditions apply. Higher Education Loans Board, empowering dreams.
Those are the men you payroll. The men you pay to frustrate my efforts as governor.
Those are just mere allegations and propaganda.
Get them out of my office, Moses, immediately.
Or what?
Bob.
You, last person I want to talk to.
Yet I might be the only person to help you with your child.
We'll let the courts handle that.
Bob, you know you're going to lose if you do that, right?
I would have gotten my revenge.
Every day here, we endeavor to embrace progress, engage in new concepts, advance the wheels of change and discovery. We are USIU Africa.
The Kuza Awards are here. This year's theme is Raising the Standard of Excellence in Broadcasting. Vote for your favorite channel and TV for the People's Choice Award. To vote for the People's Choice Awards, SMS the word Kuza, that's K-U-Z-A, to 15601. Answer 4 simple questions and press send. This text message is absolutely free. Voting ends 8th May 2022. Vote NTV, turning on your word for the People's Choice Awards.
A special edition of, with all due respect, the life and times of the late His Excellency the President, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. And on the side of the break, we spoke about the moments that the journalist, the veteran journalist with me have had with the man. And right now, just to get a sense of if you could just zoom back and look at his presidency and time, starting with you again, Maura, there's the two sides of the things that happened with his presidency. There was the question of him coming to office in this popular initiative. I think it was 67% voted in, 63%. I don't think any other president will ever get that, you know, at least in the near future. And it was built on something. There was a wind of change, but it was also a coalition of sorts, right? And that happens, and then something happens, you know, of this memorandum of understanding that somehow could not be implemented for whatever reason. Talk to me around that period, as someone that you've covered before, and say, what happened to this man in that time? Politically, was that the right thing to do? And what do you think about that moment per se?
Why Kibaki? The politician and the manager of the technocrat side. He had a government with PSs and the side that seemed to be working so well. But on the political side, he seemed to stutter and stagger both terms. First, remember in 2005, the banana orange referendum really knocked him off course to a place where one night he fired the entire cabinet, you remember? Yeah. That was very poor politics. He pushed on with that referendum with all the warning signs it was going down. And that referendum going down gave birth to the orange. That's when Raila said, na hii chungwa itakuwa chama. That's where it started. It will haunt him at the transition in 2007. Orange came strong, and the dispute of the election gave birth to Kenya's worst moment in post-election violence. So second time again, he started off very poorly. But on the government
governance
build-up, things went on.
Right.
Thika Road was built in the second term. Outering plans were all second term. Plans of SGR were all second term. But politic-wise, he did poorly. They've been forced by the world to coexist in the Grand Coalition government. All the promises made of the Grand Coalition government, he starts and keeps quiet. You remember, at one time, the other side did not know whether he wants us to go ahead with this or not. It was stillborn,
yeah,
if you could say, Grand Coalition.
Right.
It started badly, proceeded badly, and almost ended badly. So he did well in what he's being praised for now as he lies there. Economy, he did well. Policies went on well. But politics, he did not seem to have advisors who could hold him together. Some of his most trusted abandoned him at his time of need. Mother Karua walked out of his cabinet, and she was one of the closest. Some of his best guys had to step back when the scandals hit.
Yes.
So you can say the side we are seeing now, and this is African, when someone goes, you don't speak a lot of bad. The side we are seeing now is a good side.
Yeah.
But Kibaki had a lot of problems.
The management of politics, as Maria correctly says, this dominated the 10 years, if you like. Problematic as it was, where do we place essentially not just the blame, but what has that given us to date? Because we still have those fissures today, you know, born from those 2005 moments.
Mistrust. Today we are unable to build a coalition arising from the mistrust we started all back in 2002-03. But let me say, I think this idea of, and that's why the debate is becoming very interesting about being a good economist on one side, and you know, we cannot turn away from the level, the increased level of corruption under Kibaki. It's after 2002, we see guys now flying with choppers around town, big vehicles. You remember when they came in 2002, there was a story around having received or gotten empty coffers because somebody went away with everything. But then they went into some sort of spending spree and all that. So the issues of corruption, the Anglo-leasing and all that, all this happened under the watch of Mr. Kibaki, and he never said anything about it. For me, it's some sort of a paradox. Maybe some miracle just happening, because he was totally unable to organize his house. kickstarting an era of a lot of these biases in politics. Until today now, when you sit down to discuss a coalition, somehow you...
Wasn't that there though before the Boy regime and the corruption, the theft of public resources?
Maybe we can say previously under Kanu, that's my view. I think it was maybe one person who was stealing, but look at the level of politicians just under the Kibaki, the first regime. Let's audit them, and you will be shocked. Yeah, and we are talking about now mega figures. Now, when we are talking about billions, yeah, and this is a fact that I think is in public record. He presided over the grandiose theft. Big people. Yeah, Murungar went home and we know what happened. Yeah, the stories about the figures that were being quoted and all that. So it's just part of the complications around the guy that we'll never understand him. But silence made him look maybe aloof and escape from the blame.
Yeah, there's this thing that, Kibaki is a good guy. The people around him are the problematic ones. But just to keep on the same thesis, perhaps, was it a time where there was more expectations of government and governance, so that during the Kanu time, people expected people to steal, public servants to walk away with money. And perhaps during his time, because they had created this sort of new level of consciousness, we see it a bit more and we'll judge him a bit harshly because of that.
I think the problem came from Kibaki took over from a regime which had institutionalized, so to say, that money can be gotten anywhere. These people, the politicians around him, they were suffering from a hangover of the other regime, where the saying that it is our turn to eat was embedded in their mind. But they got a different boss, the boss who believed you must work for your shilling. And Matere Keriri said it the other day on TV, Kibaki will not give you a shilling. You work for it. I understand one of the relatives went to him to ask for money to start a business. Pesa iko kwa banki mingi sana, enda kwa banki. That was Kibaki. The second thing, Kibaki changed the presidency. He changed the presidency this way. The other regime, there were always delegations and crowds at State House. And whenever those delegations went, they never came out empty-handed. So people thought Kibaki would perpetuate that. I understand in the first week, a delegation went, they never even had tea. And they were saying, "Mmekuja kuniona, asante sana." That was all. So he changed the presidency of State House and Harambee House, where a president can go at 8 and leave at 5. He changed the presidency. Now, the other bit about managing the economy versus politics. Of the political history that I know, people who have governed in the developed world, it is not possible to get a leader combining the two. For example, Winston Churchill was a very excellent politician. In fact, Time magazine voted him one of the men of the century. But when it came to economy, the first Churchill had to resign because of a scandal in finance. The second Churchill, because he was a prime minister separately twice,
right,
he also went the same, but remained in parliament.
He was a very good politician.
He did, he was in parliament for 62 years. He went there at 26. He did 62 years. Up to the last time, he gazed at the exit door and turned to the speaker and went to die. I had some people saying Kibaki might be the longest MP. No, Kibaki is lesser. The only thing, and I'm subject to checking, Kibaki is one of the longest, the politicians who have served longest as finance minister, other than Sheikh Hamdan, who did 50 years, United Arab Emirates.
Okay. The transition from the politician and the economist and governance, and there's obviously a distinction there. What do you see, perhaps, from the Kibaki time, the 10 years in office, that obviously we've not been good managers of the economy that he left? That's very obvious. We've also not been very good managers of the politics, all right? That was already deteriorating at that time. To you, what is it that you say from the Kibaki time still stands the test of time today? That perhaps the younger people can say, well, we may not have connected with the 90s, know anything about what happened in the 80s, but what's about our future, about this guy that is lying in state? Why should anyone care who's never seen him, dealt with him?
I seem to remember quicker some that he started, but that have gone down, but which can be revived very quickly. One of the ones I said earlier was, soon after he took over, he changed the policy. Government stopped taking money from local banks. What does that do? Banks are left with too much money. Everybody here will remember when bankers came to our offices to ask us to take a loan without security. That one is gone now, but it's possible to bring back.
Because government is
a
borrowing
policy.
locally.
Yes, yes.
Right.
He made policies that put money in the pockets of the people. The cooperative movement became very strong in his time, including you seeing private circles that came up in his time, which are still surviving and doing well. You don't now have to belong to a circle that is based at nation. The circle movement now is outside, and people can get loans and save in those circles. And other policies that he put, mostly through his technocrats, he entrusted them with doing what they thought was right, which can still stand the test of time. So that is the economy. However, on politics, one thing he did, the hands off was good. It lowered the acrimony like we are facing now. Towards the end, the BBC asked him, who are you leaving it to? And he told BBC, it's that question, you should put it to Kenyans. They're the ones who should tell you who they'll give it to, the presidency. He did not seem to anoint anyone publicly.
Was that a mistake with the benefit of hindsight?
I wouldn't call it a mistake. Indeed, even with the history seeming to repeat itself now, it would seem Kibaki's plan seemed to work easier than this one. You get, this one is seeming to replicate 2002, when the outgoing one did exactly the same as the current one is doing. You can see the acrimony. With Kibaki, the transition seemed to be smooth, easy, leaving it to the people to tough it out, and him watching. And people wondering, why is he not nominating anyone? My personal thinking, I would go the Kibaki way.
You go the Kibaki way.
Yes. There is one thing I'd like to add in finance. Mzee Kenyatta, those who saw Mzee Kenyatta govern, ministers were permanent. And you see, part of the reason why Kibaki is known in finance is that he was permanent. He served in finance for 12 years. There was a time when Kibaki was being thought of a job in IMF. Then, of course, Kenya couldn't let him go. There was a time when Kibaki would actually speak in East Africa, and people would be waiting to hear what he says in finance. Just like this man who served 50 years in, he died last year, 50 years in Emirates. That man, whenever he spoke in OPEC, everybody would be listening because of longevity. But here is a situation where there was even a time we had 3 ministers, I don't know whether they were 4, each serving 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. They read one budget, one budget, one budget. You cannot have an economy with the switchovers.
All right. To the same question, as we go through this question of political transition.
The first question that I asked was what we can see or what we can learn from the... Mine would be that actually Kibaki laid the basis, the foundation. We cannot take it away from him that he initiated a very massive construction of roads and of course the free primary education. So those who are coming after, you see President Uhuru is also in a mad rush to leave a legacy project. So the idea of a legacy project becomes ingrained in our politics. Everybody who comes wants to do something that will be remembered for. Of course, the issues around the cost of these projects. And personally, from where I come from, again, I always believe that I had a problem with this model. It was sort of brick and mortar, not the software. You know, you rather have a very big roads, you know, rather than having supplies in hospital, maybe books in schools, maybe water and all that. So I have a problem with the way we do these things. That why would you have a road costing you 100 billion and there's no medicine in hospital? So maybe the next regime now we need to focus on the things that matter. And even if you know the best model, you go to the biggest states in Europe, there are no skyscrapers there. People live a common life, but they have everything. They are taxed heavily, but actually they can go to school, they can go to where. So we have actually, one thing again I learned is that we have a very greedy regime across the government and even the private sector. I'm sure if you had you went to hospital now with your insurance cover, at one go it will be gone because of the greed, you know, people overcharge you. This is the sort of things that we cannot be proud of as a country. That's what we did. Let us now be human beings first of all, rather than having very big roads. And how many people have roads, vehicles, by the way?
A few.
Maybe you are lucky to have one.
Let's talk about the place of media, you know, as we went down. The place of media in this, I mean, the two of you have had the chance of, you know, experiencing the Moi time at its height, and of course, you know, the Kibaki time. Speak a bit about media and media freedom and media space. From where I sit, when Kibaki came into office, media got a bit of, media business made money, at the very least. You know, it was busting and, you know, with all these government, you know, contracts, if you like, and that sort of thing. What about the media space itself? Did it grow? Did it increase? We had challenges, you know, because this one was investigative journalism was also coming into other offering. What happened during Kibaki's time with the media compared to the Moi time?
Okay, I'll speak about media freedom. I've tested the Moi one, but in the multi-party side, unlike Eman who tested full single party and multi-party. Yeah. Moi multi-party side, media was still not very free, despite multi-party having come. There would be times when media would not cover exactly what you want to cover because the controls did not fully, it took time for the monolith Kanu machinery to let go of media freely. Kibaki time from 2002 to when he exit, many of us look back and see it as one of the best media eras. though I was at the Standard when the Magarian-Sagasian raid happened, it was quite a one-off. Most of the Kibaki regime time, media was left alone to do your work, grow. We do not quote very many other incidents where media came under attack from the Kibaki regime. Apart from those ones that you remember is because of the drama and the impact that came with them. What we watched here earlier with the First Lady, you cannot cite that as something prolonged, but basically Kibaki time, it's not just media that grew, basically all businesses. When other businesses grow, media will also grow. And moving towards the end of his regime, again, it's not just freedom that media experiences in order to grow. There has also now been a lot of the digital interruption, which has affected media a lot. And that one, you may not blame it on any regime worldwide. But I would take his regime as the best in media freedom.
Okay.
I totally disagree with that.
Why?
Kibaki unleashed his family and Armenian mercenaries to the media. It's a fact. You played it there. The wife.
Were there not instances? Was it systematic?
Yes, actually yes. My senior here I remember reading his story. What happened that night? Was it very good? You unleash your family to the media? No. Margarian, the least we expected at that time even was even a government denial or even feigning ignorance. We have a minister waking up and saying, "You rattled last night? We come." You remember there was a story about David Makali at the same time wrote a story about the confession of the killers of Dr. Mbai, or the Ambo Mbai, who was then the devolution, who chaired the devolution committee at Bomas. Makali ended up inside. He was saved by a court. Yeah, I think at that time I used to think that a magistrate is a superior court. When Mr. Mchelule ruled that actually Makali had been accused of having stolen a tape, what I think 100 shillings, 250 shillings, $5 actually. Yeah. So the judge ruled that Makali stole in public interest, so he let him go. So I thought that was law. Today I was told, no, it's not law. It was a magistrate. It was an inferior court, so it doesn't stand. There's David Ochami, you remember, around 2003, for merely expressing an opinion. There was a gangland arrest along the whole road from Loita Street, the entire Loita Street at Kenya Times at that time. He was arrested, and the case dragged on for 2 years. So it is not true. It was a free reign. And in terms of the media growth, again, that is also debatable, because the media in Kenya, as far as I know, the only things that have actually grown are ethnic FM stations, and we have a history of them, especially in Mount Kenya. And one of us went somewhere, you remember, in Hague. So it wasn't very easy, but again, we can go back in time. That one of the problems, I think, maybe Kibaki didn't have a problem, but his handlers. You remember when they took over office, the bravado they were expressing at that time, yeah? Telling Moi, go home and see how governance is done. I remember one minister saying at some point that a title deed is merely a piece of paper, you know? And all those things that started in 2003, dragged us all the way to 2007. Mm-hmm. It was basically chest thumping. Okay.
You have the benefit of doubt for working from 4th October 1982 when you first covered Kibaki, and during this is deep Kanu time.
Yes. My experience in a single party is immense. Immense in the sense that what we saw, we were reduced to robots. You people came to work for a nation in this beautiful skyscraper. We used to be on Tomboya, a former bakery.
It wasn't beautiful then?
It was, we had a toilet in the newsroom of cardboards, and they open up here. So there were papers, and people went to detention, like na Koigwa Mwere, Pambanas. We used, and they would come to newsroom. We used to take turns in that toilet. And while you are reading it, you are looking up because Big Brother could be seeing you. So that was the time. It went on like that. Under Kibaki, the press freedom, like Ibrahim is pointing out, yes, it was not absolute. It was not absolute, only that one correction is that even in the developed world, press freedom is not absolute. What happens there is that if government complains about something, the editor resigns. And it goes like that. With the exception of Russia, where Putin will put you in. So under Kibaki, those things happened, but they were a little bit less than what happened
during the Moi time.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to wind down, but with this one comment from a gentleman called Paul on Twitter. It says, for me, what stands out for me is the combination of synergies, extreme activists and technocrats to form a functional government. This was magical, and only Kibaki could do that. Nobody ever, no one can and will in the future. Just to wind down, and the final thoughts, starting from here. There is a lot that would be said about this man and his time and his stuck on history. But the future still is ahead of us, right? As you look to the future, what would you say for those who are sort of running for office and the kind of combinations you're putting forward, and say there's a Kibaki-esque, you know, sort of leadership or ideas that can come out? What is, for you, the most important thing that we should not forget from that Kibaki era? Obviously the good. Oruko will give us the bad.
Yeah. Okay, first I'll say, dying this time, when we have an election around the corner, is a time that will give a lot of people, the politicians especially, who are coming into office or yearning to come to office, a time to re-examine themselves. And even as we wait for Oruko to say the bad, I'll quote Shakespeare. The good that men do lives on after them. The bad is oft interred with their bones.
Right.
Sorry, the other way. the bad lives on after them.
Yes.
The good is oft interred with their bones.
Right.
Let it be so with Kibaki. However, we are likely, this is Africa, to remember the good. Most of what we are seeing is just the good. And it's not fake good. He did a lot of good for this country. He purposefully let government work. One of the biggest things was KRA. Revenue doubled. It had never happened. Those are good things. Taxes were used well. Despite the corruption, there was a lot of usage of taxes despite the corruption. Meaning, there is still the bad. There is also, and there is the good, which Shakespeare says is entirely their bones. Yeah. So, of the 3 presidents being assessed, he's being assessed as the best. Nation here called him the best CEO.
Yeah.
So he has a good part which the ones coming into office should strive to emulate. And whoever takes over, listen to what the people are saying. Seek to have a good legacy by doing the good so that you'll be remembered more for the good.
Okay, Oruko, 30 seconds. The bad.
Yeah. I think he stole our revolution in 2002. You come with a very heavy mandate, then you just mess it up.
Okay.
His legacy is economy.
Imam Omari, veteran journalist, thank you very much for coming out of retirement to talk to us. Really appreciate it. My name is Rory, Chairman, Media Council of Kenya. Thank you very much as well for talking to us, and get well soon. Thank you very much. And Ibrahim Oruko, journalist here at Daily Nation, the beautiful, beautiful building here at the Daily Nation. I'm James Smart. With all due respect, you have a lovely night.